We should start.
Okay,
All right.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not going to repeat that.
no.
I don't have to repeat that, right?
Yeah, why don't you start it again? Just.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you be more succinct than what I
No,
said?
you did great.
Okay.
I'll
So,
add if you need it.
we talked about one of the points was brought up was community conversations. That was the work that all of us are doing, and how the Human Rights Commission is how that's going to affect and how we're going to all work together. So that was like an issue thing that we could focus on later on. Let's see.
Yeah, I was thinking of
What-
pollinators in the charter.
I'm sorry,
I want pollinators in the charter.
pollinators in the charter. Okay, there you go.
You were in
So,
that group.
So
We need
the
a comprehensive plan.
Yes.
it is it in the plan? Really?
No.
No, but it,
But we
Okay.
could.
yeah.
Jackie,
Um,
anything else that you guys talked
Oh,
about?
yeah.
Yes, we talked about, I can't read my writing. We talked about, in terms of the refugees, we were talking about the refugee committee and the asylum people. We talked about how positive and how good it feels to help people in need and how many needs there are and how you can really have an impact on that. And in terms of additional directions, Todd showed, for those of you who know or don't know, is on the sunny side of the street. And Todd is also a psychologist, so that talking about how can we, maybe we can present or work on helping people psychologically that are coming in,
With
these
all their
refugees
needs.
with all the needs.
Yeah.
We're looking for how can we, part of the committee is, the refugee committee is looking for what can be done in a national level to take bigger steps to make it easier for asylum seekers to get that process going. And one of the things we talked about is how each person in the different groups bring different things. So we have big hearts. We are all wanting to do things. We have like-minded values, and so how we all can work together, how positive that can be for us and how we've made friends through it. Let's see.
This one.
Oh, okay. We talked about, and we're talking about Project Literacy and how with project, we talked about IFTAR in the past, doing how IFTAR, because of, I feel like I'm trying to rush
COVID.
through that because of COVID, we haven't been able to do things in person. Would it be possible to do IFTAR, do something with IFTAR online, the way similar to
Unity.
the Unity breakfast? And when we were talking about another thing we talked about in terms of the bees and the ways we can help, Pam talked about that they're going to be looking for people to do planting and weeding and gardening and watering. So there's going to be a lot of need for people to help out. So that's going to be something that we can all be part of.
And the weather's
Anything
good.
else?
One last thought, just on that Sue Ellen had mentioned before, on trying to help the asylum seekers that are stuck here in the backlog of waiting and in limbo, that I would like to find we're researching it, but we'd like to find somebody that could be a good speaker that could talk about what is being done nationally to try to influence that process and change it so these people don't have this interminable wait. too.
Okay.
And I was thinking I would like to do a show and interview somebody and use my little forum to get it publicized, at least locally.
Lovely. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Jackie. Great. Room 2,
Thanks,
which
Jack.
was Connie, Jennifer, and Mishi. Who would like to report?
We didn't have time to say who would report, but if it's okay with the group, I'm happy to share. I did take notes. So we had an interesting conversation that started out by asking how can we collaborate from group to group? And one of the things we talked about was just communicating with each other and being sure to let other groups know when we have like the hearings that Eileen mentioned that we will be having a hearing before the town council about the naming of the Delta. And so to let people know when that's going to happen, and hopefully people can come out and support us. And then if other groups have things that they need people to show up for, to let people know so that we can, sort of cross through groups. One of the things people said early on was that we all people are very busy and everybody can't do everything, even though we're interested in the work that everybody's doing and we support the work that everyone's doing. So that conversation sort of morphed into talking about how do we make connections with people who are not already in groups, some of our groups, and reaching out more into the community, which sort of morphed into talking about maybe thinking about, this creating a web between the groups and connecting up in a way, and thinking about a little bit into the future towards 2030 when Watertown has its 400th anniversary, and starting to think now about how do we as working groups and Watertown citizens, how would we want to show up with a powerful presence in how Watertown celebrates its history and future relating to peace, justice, and the environment issues that we feel so strongly and passionately about, so that if we start having those conversations now, we can maybe start to plan towards the future, which would also engage other people in the community. So that was sort of a big idea. And then we sort of wrapped up with the idea that Connie came up with, was talking about interactive trails and possibly writing proposals that we could all sort of work together on. And in Discuss It initiative, we've been talking about having interactive trails around the town that highlight Indigenous history and culture and presence. And then we started thinking, well, that could also be true for Black people in the community and their contributions. And it could also be true for the environment. Like, part of the trail could be, where are the bee pollinator gardens? And it could all be linked in together. And then, so that was sort of where we ended up, and then we bounced out. So,
Sounds good. Some great ideas.
And we also talked about the Alexandria meeting.
great.
Yeah, which is tomorrow, and the link is in the chat.
Okay, group 4, which is down to Mary and Tyler.
And Anne and Kathy. And
Yeah,
and
and Jackie Button and I were in it, but Tyler, do you feel like you can speak to it, or
I didn't take notes, but I can talk about
me neither?
the part that I was paying closest attention to was like there's some natural, at least conceptually, it makes a lot of sense to have collaborations between Watertown Community for Black Lives and Watertown Faces Climate Change, like environmental justice, especially given that the way the climate group is focusing their work is has a climate justice lens already. So it seems like there ought to be natural opportunities to collaborate. So the biggest thing I got out of that conversation, I did remember another thing, but the biggest one was like, yes, we'll take steps to make sure that we are collaborating, and doing that through making personal connections, like making an opportunity to get together and talk, because more abstract ways sometimes can work, but for this ongoing idea of an ongoing collaboration, it seems like it helps if you have kind of make personal connections. We also talked a little bit just about how, I mean, others have touched on it, the fact that everybody has limited bandwidth, and we do appreciate the things that, each other are doing. And we see that there are connections, but there's just only so much you can do. But one thing is, people can respect their own limits and don't add to the difficulty by beating yourself up about not being able to do everything.
All right, thank you.
I often reassure myself that other people are working on things that I don't have time for.
Exactly. Room 5. Spokesperson.
Okay, I think that's us. I've got some notes. We got to hear from some new arrivals with some strong interests in topics that WCPJE working groups focus on. We talked about pollinators, plants, project literacy, peace, and also some things that don't start with P. And we talked a little bit about tree planting in Watertown and a personal experience. It was the city's tree planting, very impressive, very professional, but apparently they were not given a choice to get a native tree, which is something that I think we might press on.
Yes.
Right, on which I didn't know, and so I was very. Tony, we had Tony in our group, and he shared some of his thoughts. So I will now say what I wrote down, and he can say, "No, that's not what I meant at all." He's looking for people who want to become active on topics about U.S. military expenditure, sales of products of the U.S. armaments industry, and U.S. foreign policy. Actions might include educational programming, public protest and legislation, pushing on legislation. Some of the things that, for example, are currently of interest, but the list is long. It's what's happening in Ukraine right now, efforts to isolate China, and noting that the potential existential crisis around nuclear weapons is resurfacing. For context, WCPJE is an affiliate of Mass Peace Action, and having a working group focused on that topic, it could deepen our ties with him as an affiliate.
Amazing,
Oh,
amazing.
right.
I'm gonna get the recording of that. That's for sure.
All right.
Eric, if I could just add one thing, there's been a lot of conversation already about how to learn what each of our groups together are doing and make cross references there. But also I was very struck by what Bron said about how it was just through luck that she learned about our group by having run into Pam Phillips, and that she had no idea that there was a Trees for Watertown, and that people in the community just do not know about us in spite of all our efforts to advertise our presence and what we do. And I know this is something we've talked about over the years, but this is a problem. How do we figure out, I don't know if there's some way we can think about how to have greater awareness.
Market ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but we have, sorry, I forgot that as a crucial part of the conversation because I was all head up about it and I forgot to type. Yes. Pam, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm still not completely sure how Bron and I connected, but it was on iNaturalist. So it's a way you can hear bug pictures.
Right, that's what you said.
So I must have, maybe I identified a bug or something. I don't know.
Yes, I sent off something. I can't remember what.
Okay, there you are.
You responded and your location was Watertown. And I was like, this woman sounds like a clone of me. And I was so excited because it was plants, it was native plants, it was pollinators, and it was insects.
Yes.
And what
I looked at your description too.
And I was like, yes. So so I started trying to research you, and that's how I found the whole organization.
Interesting.
Cool. Okay.
All right, moving on then to room 6. Do we have a spokesperson?
I think I was.
Yes, I was chosen.
Okay. Right,
Because I'm sorry.
No, that's right. We did hear that you were chosen.
I was chosen. All right, now it's getting dark and I'm going to have trouble seeing. We didn't really solve any problems, but we kind of came up with questions and maybe topics for more discussion. The first one was, in the absence of sort of personal meetings and face-to-face, it's how do we form the deeper connections that have sort of motivated us and rewarded us in our work in the past. So it was kind of, I mean, we didn't have any answer, although I feel like what we did tonight, just sort of talking in a small group with just a few people, helped me anyway, sort of overcome some of the sort of Zoom distance kind of thing. That was one. And the other one, is there a different kind of forum or a topic or a format that we could engage in that would engage younger activists and turn younger people onto us? And I think that might fit with the whole marketing question that the other groups came up with.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah.
Is there any connection with a science teacher at the local high school? Is there an environmental club? I know the teachers are stressed as, you know, stretched as it is, but it is possible.
There wasn't very active one at Watertown High School.
Yeah.
And we worked on drinking fountains and those kinds of things. They had a very loyal following of students. I don't know what situation they're in right now.
And
But-
I've been working with Judy Fallows, who helps run the school gardens. And there's a lot of education that they do through that too. You know, how plants work, that kind of stuff.
Yep. So we have had connections with certain teachers around certain topics and engaging students at different times.
My husband is here. This is Jim Sutherland.
Hey, Jim.
I just had a comment, something that we did in Ridgewood. I was on the senior, getting seniors involved kind of committee that the town set up and providing transportation to seniors and everything. But what we did was we had a fair. I know that this is difficult currently with COVID, but we had a fair at the library where we invited all of the volunteer organizations that needed volunteers to come and set up tables and then advertised in the community so that anybody that had time to volunteer, had an interest, could come and see what organizations they would have an interest in volunteering in. And that was a way of getting younger people and just getting out the information of what was available to volunteer for. And you might want to think about doing something like that.
There is a town volunteer day that we should probably participate in more actively.
Well, what did you say? I didn't hear.
There's a Watertown volunteer day. I
Ah,
think it's like the first Saturday in May.
Oh, that's Watertown Community Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
the other thing is I have no idea how many, and I've never seen a list, how many organizations there are in Watertown that are involved. For example, for refugees, that I would bet there are at least 5 organizations. You could go to the churches, food banks, all sorts of things, but there's no central information that one can get. Is there?
There's a list that was put together recently on a slide that I can try to find and drop in the chat, or I can share with anybody later. It's not comprehensive. I would love for everybody to take a look at it and say, hey, you didn't put down, the whatevers, and then we could continue to grow on that. It was produced by Watertown Forward. So we always delight in duplication. Exactly. I think I don't think I'm going to have the brain capacity to do that now, but But you can find me at NicoleForWatertown@gmail, and I'll be happy to share that with anybody. And I really would love to make it more full if we could.
Sounds good. And our last group was room 7. And I think I can kick off, and Barbara, feel free to add in. But we kind of focused on 2 particular issues. And one was about gun violence and the fact that our town, our organization has kind of lost touch with some of the work that we had done with students around walkouts and all the school shootings and things that have been very active, and that Eileen and I had gotten involved with the Massachusetts organization to prevent gun violence. And that's an area in which we could hopefully get some interest generated around working within our organization for the future. And it was noted that, there was this incident, this issue in Newton when a gun shop was going to open up. I don't know how many of you were aware of this. And there was a huge outcry that the town, there are a lot of people in town who didn't want this gun shop to open, and that was sort of falling out. Was it illegal to deny a shop the ability to open, even if it was following the regulations of being a certain distance from a school, but otherwise that the community couldn't necessarily fight it. So things like that. And a number of us who didn't realize that there is a gun shop in Watertown, Barbara filled us in that there has been one for many, many, many years.
I don't know if it still exists. It's
Right.
not there. And Tony, do you remember what happened with the recent zoning issue?
I do. It passed last night, Tuesday night. And so there'll be a change in the zoning code that it does allow gun sales, but they have to be in certain areas and with certain restrictions, much like the marijuana stores that are in town. They can't be within a certain number of feet of various schools and parks and that sort of thing. But yes, we have put quite a few restrictions, but we decided that it was too much of a risk to ban gun sale shops that sell guns because of the first right, because of, yes, yes, and that would just take us down a path that would be a long legal battle. So the option was to regulate as opposed to ban.
Right. And this is Barbara again. We mentioned that there had been an active gun safety committee led by Richard Marcus, but it is no longer in business. And there might well be some call for it. And there is new legislation in California that requires liability insurance for guns. Not confiscation, not licensing, but liability insurance, which is an interesting tack to take.
Yes.
And Sue Ellen, you might want to add that nobody has on this little group had bandwidth to do more.
Right.
And actually, yeah, so that was one thing. And
Entirely true. As Eileen was saying, we have tried to go to some of the Massachusetts meetings and get involved in writing letters and legislative efforts around gun legislation in Massachusetts. The other topic that we focused on was Barbara's idea about trying to re-stimulate, recreate, re-energize neighborhood groups, as she talked about earlier.
Hi, honey.
Oh,
honey, 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 honey.
Kathy, you aren't on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was sweet.
All right, I'm gonna mute myself.
That would be your pet.
I got her.
Okay, thanks.
So at this moment, I am looking for volunteers who might want to set up a neighborhood group in your little neighborhood intersection street. And you can contact me and we can figure out anything structural from there. And I suppose it's,
yeah, I thought one of the most interesting angles is that as Barbara had pointed out, is that in many ways, because Arun was wondering, how could this relate to Watertown citizens? And actually, a neighborhood group that becomes more intimate and people get to know each other can be addressing all the issues that Watertown citizens deals with. Environmental issues, somebody's about to cut down a tree, or something's going on with the zoning, or what's happening with the building. Talking about the yard arts, climate change, potholes, there's all kinds of issues that relate to the health of a neighborhood. And,
Planning and zoning.
right. So the idea, and as Eileen had mentioned too, the era when we had all these block parties and there was funding in town for block parties, that was a wonderful way in which neighborhoods got together. Eileen's already kind of done a fair amount of organizing with her neighborhood, but I think Barbara's idea was an important one that we agreed that there was a way that it connect in a very broad fashion to a lot of the issues, rather than a focused working group that's specifically on one particular issue, but all these issues affect a particular neighborhood, and if there's an immigrant family or a family of color, and how all those kinds of issues can be more intimately discussed, and people get to know each other who don't know each other in their own neighborhoods. So it is now 8:45, and we have covered all the groups and some wonderful, wonderful conversations and ideas that have been brought forth. I think it's just really terrific. In terms of wrapping up and next steps, any thoughts? Tony, did you have a particular way you wanted to wrap up?
No, I didn't. I think just to say that we are still organizing our monthly meetings. We are looking, I think each working group was going to pick a month to have a meeting. They could do anything they want with it. I know some of the working groups have already chosen, like Sue Ellen's, the refugees have chosen a month for a meeting. Climate has chosen one around the referendum. But there are, if people have other ideas, that we're going to keep our May ones, which is our annual meeting in May. So that one is taken. But if people have other ideas for monthly meetings, I'm not sure, Deborah, or anybody on the steering committee, did we do one for February already, or are we still in the process?
I don't see anything for February. I see Pigs Gusset picked April. May's the annual meeting. I think June might be bees because that's where pollinator week will be. And then for July is climate change, and October is refugee group. That's what I've got. And there's also second choices between September and October.
Okay, so if you have other ideas for our monthly meeting, please send them to Sue Ellen. She'll get them to the steering committee.
Yeah, it could be about a wonderful topic, a guest speaker or speakers, or whatever.
I'd like to reserve one for the film, and I couldn't tell from you, it was hard for me to track which months were open versus closed, and we don't have to do that now with everybody, but I'd like to reserve one of the open slots for the film, for the environmental film that we talked about by email earlier this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
And put something in the chat about that, so.
Yeah, Nicole, could you look at the chat? Because I ran into Bonnie today.
Yep.
February,
I told her
March.
that. Yeah, I told her that she could, so we're all set for that as long as I know when it's going to be and it works for her.
Okay.
You gonna
And-
show
and
Bonnie's
we want-
movie?
And we wanted September or October for the fair share
Right.
amendment, right?
Fair share, right, that's,
Yes, what, is it the first Wednesday?
the
Third Wednesday of every month.
Okay, the third Wednesday of October.
You want October, okay.
Well, we definitely don't want November because you'll have already voted.
Well, the refugee support group could choose a different month. I guess we had put in dibs for October, but
Well, we can do September or August.
I think September's better, Anne. Gives people more time.
September is better, but I thought someone else had that one.
No, I think it was October that somebody else had.
Oh, well, let's have us have
refugee.
September then.
Well, that's
Okay.
great. So we got a few, but if anybody has something for February, we are open to,
Nicole was saying maybe Bonnie's Films could go there.
oh, okay, that would be great.
I'm gonna offer her Feb and March and let her pick.
Okay.
So I think that helps a little bit. And again, if people have ideas, we still have a few more months open. Please shoot those ideas to Sue Ellen.
All right, well, thank you. Eileen, did you?
No, I
wanna
just
say-
gonna say goodnight.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you all for a wonderful gathering and some really, really great, good thinking and great ideas and sharing. It really helps a lot to give some direction to the steering committee and to our organization for the coming year or more.
Thank
Thank
you
you guys
all.
for
Good
doing
night.
all the work you do for the on the steering committee.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Right.
All right, bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.